Hi, everybody. Welcome to another boxing hangout. I'm Al Bernstein, if you didn't know that. And we are delighted on this hangout that we're going to get a chance to chat about something really important in the world of boxing, and that is the unification in some fashion, even if it's just in terms of ideas or helping each other out, of the various sanctioning bodies in the sport of boxing. Of course, boxing is a different kind of sport, whereas in the United States, for instance, or with basketball, baseball, football, National Hockey League, etc., there's an organization that runs the sport. Boxing is a splintered sport. There are a number of different organizations, 4 that are listed as the most, I think, the ones that we acknowledge as the major organizations in the sport of boxing. And so it creates a different situation for the sport. And even if you go elsewhere, if you go to Europe and you're talking about soccer, it's the Premier League or wherever, there's usually an organization that runs things. Boxing is a little bit different, and that's something that it has had to kind of figure out how to navigate through those waters. So we're going to devote a show here to talking about how those organizations can function with each other. The man who puts all of it together for us, Dan Parks, our producer, with us as always. And Dan, in a moment, we're going to introduce our special guest. But Dan, this is something you came up with based upon a recent meeting of the boxing organizing bodies, and it's an interesting concept.
Absolutely, Al. And I'll tell you what, the moment that I read the original article, I have to tell you, the little warm spot showed up in my heart there. I went, you know what? Okay, now we're on track. Now we're starting to make the right moves in the right direction. And really excited to be able to have our guest here today with us.
And you know what I love about, and I always talk about how you are the driving force a lot of times in all these topics and everything, because while you have many great attributes that qualify you to do exactly what you're doing here, at the end of the day, you're a boxing fan. And
exactly.
You came to this project.
Exactly.
You know, for all your success in the business world, Dan's company is an event planning company. They've worked with, big movie studios. You've done all kinds of things. You're a social media expert. But with all that stuff, bottom line is you came to this project as a boxing fan. And when I think of what we're about to discuss, as a fan, you looked at this and said, I just want to hear about this, right?
Exactly. And, the thing is that from the very beginning, when I was a kid watching boxing, there's always been, all the different sanctioning bodies, and there's always been the battles going back and forth, and there's always some sort of a controversy or something going on, and it's one of the things that might be holding the sport back. And, when I saw this story and I see the steps that are starting to go into the right direction, the first thing I had to do was come to you and see if we can do a show about it.
Absolutely. And toward that end, we're going to talk now to one of the people that was present at this meeting of a number of the sanctioning bodies, and he is a gentleman that I've known for quite a while. He is now the president of the WBC, Mauricio Sulaiman. Mauricio, how are you?
Very, very good. Thank you so much. I'm very happy to be here, very excited, and deeply appreciate this opportunity.
Well, it's great to visit with you. First, before we go any further, I want to issue my condolences on the loss of your father, and of course a major figure in the sport of boxing and in shaping its history for a long time. But I know on your level it's a terrible personal loss, so we want to offer our condolences on that.
Thank you so very much. Thank you. I really appreciate it.
And you, of course, are continuing on as president of the WBC, kind of a continuation of all of what he's been about. And already there's the sense that you want to create your own path, however that may be, not in opposition to anything your father did, but to put your own imprint on things. And one of the things early on is this interest in cooperating with the other organizations. For people that don't know, if they should know if they're watching this probably, but if they don't, it's okay. 4 organizing bodies that are kind of recognized as the major ones: WBC, WBA, IBF, and WBO in boxing. you guys all got together and had a meeting recently. First of all, whose idea was it to have that meeting?
Well, we have met in the past. My father always kept a very good relationship, respectful relationship with the other organizations. As you were saying, if I may just give a brief message, football, baseball, hockey, basketball, those are the major sports, and they are organized under a league. That league owns the TV rights, owns the teams. They are the ones who have all the elements to run the sport. In boxing, the boxing organization, as we are known, we do not own any matter of the business. Those are the promoters. The promoters get the television, the sponsors, the sites, and they are the ones responsible. And that's where the problem comes. The promoter only cares for the fight they're promoting next month. They don't care if the other promotion does well, if the other promotion does bad. They're only pulling to that specific promotion they have everything hanging on. So it is a very difficult scheme that can be set for the sport. What we do as an organization, it is not only go and put a belt on the champion. There's so many things that the WBC does, and we feel proud that over the years, so many different studies and rules have been implemented to make the sport safer. We met, and it was a formidable meeting in Cancun last week.
And you met with was there? Who was present from the other organizations, and how many of the other three came to this meeting?
The WBA was represented by Gilberto Jesus Mendoza, the son of the president, who is the executive director and the vice president, along with two persons, the legal advisor and the ratings chairman. And also there was the championship committee chairman. Mm-hmm. The IBF was the president Daryl Peoples, along with the legal advisor Linda Torres and the vice president Lindsay Tucker. The WBC, we were myself and four other persons who were there, and we all just sat down and we had a formidable meeting.
Now, the WBO was not present at this.
No. We invited Mr. Valcárcel with a formal letter. I called them on the phone. I sent them a couple of reminders, and unfortunately they declined.
Okay. Well, 3 out of 4 is better than nothing. So you had these three organizations. Now, I know there were a number of topics that I know you were going to discuss, and I wanted to kind of talk about some of them individually. I think that would probably be the best way, so that you don't have to try and take the whole meeting and put it into one thing. But before I talk about the issues, let me ask you the tenor of the meeting. Was it, in your mind, did people come there with the idea that some substantial things could be done to standardize things, or was it, in your mind, people coming just to feel each other out and see where they were at?
No. It was from the first minute that we reached out and started talking about meeting. It was an immediate positive response. When we got there, it just felt. It was very good, very well taken.
You could feel a certain level, at least, of cooperation.
Absolutely. No egos, no protagonism. Nobody wanted to be the big shot. We just sat down, and we know that there are issues that we must address as organizations, and on our own organization and on a separate joint force to address several issues for the betterment of boxing. But the feeling was tremendous. It was very positive.
Okay, so as a boxing fan, when boxing fans are looking at me talking to you, I know some of these things that you talked about, of course, are all issues that are going on in their mind. And let's deal with a few of them. One thing, of course, the different organizations, right from the get-go, call weight divisions by a different name. And there was, even with the cruiserweights, a difference in weight, although I think we're now everybody's at 200 pounds, right?
Yeah, 200 pounds.
So everybody got there, but some people call it super welterweight, some people call it junior middleweight. You guys talked about that as a simple one, but making the weight classes the same name. How did that go?
Very well. That's a very simple matter.
That should be pretty easy, no?
Pretty easy, and it's just simply a matter of having the support of everybody trying to go forward and change paperwork, and it's truthfully simple. The WBC immediately accepted to change stroke weight to minimum. That's no-brainer. We want to have one name for the 17 divisions.
Perfect.
And I think it's going to happen fairly quickly, and there should not be any problem.
Good. So you guys have a little working thing going now where that's something that if the organization simply change their paperwork, they can make that happen almost immediately.
Yes, absolutely.
Progress. Okay. We're 1 for 1 here. That's pretty good. All right. Some of the other ones are a little trickier, but that's one of the things. The weight divisions, as I said, they've kind of gotten to. Now, one of the interesting things is because here's the thing. I think most boxing fans would say, look, we're going to get to this at some point in this conversation, but getting together to figure out, contenders and things of that nature, that's a very tricky deal. But even if there was a way that these organizations could just have standardized rules, everybody would be, that would be a giant first step toward making boxing seem at least a little more like the other sport. So let's take the weight situation and weigh-ins. Did you all talk about this business of 30-day and 7-day weigh-ins and how the different organizations could kind of standardize that?
Yes, we did discuss. We believe the 30 and the 7-day weigh-in is a great tool for safety in boxing. It makes the fighter understand that they have to lose weight gradually. The worst enemy for the health of the fighter is dehydration. Dehydration comes from losing large amount of weight in a short period of time, and that's the greatest concern. So we instituted the 30 and the 7-day weigh-in to help them know that by 30 days before the fight, they need to be within the 10% of their weight, and then 7 days before, 5%. The official weigh-in a day before the fight, and then they can just go sleep, rehydrate, eat, and just go into the fight as a real athlete and compete. The IBF has a same-day weigh-in, which is not the official weigh-in. It takes place the day before, but they monitor and they limit the amount of weight a fighter can gain from the official weigh-in to 10 in the morning of the day of the fight. In concept, it has merit. We are discussing, we are trying to figure out a way to implement some way, but the truth is the problem of gaining weight from the day of the fight, from the official weigh-in to fight time is very few fighters. Like Chavez is a concern, it's a common concern. Gatti was at one point, but the truth is many of the fighters have the weigh-in and they just take it and go into the fight. And you cannot also monitor how much they're going to gain from 10 a.m. until the fight time. You don't want fighters losing weight the day of the fight. That becomes another problem. So we are addressing it, and we think we're in the right direction.
Is everybody on board with the 7-day and 30-day weigh-ins?
Apparently, yes. Each organization has to go and consult their medical committee and their board. I believe they understood the position that we come from and appreciate it, and we have studies that back this rule, so it is much easier to put it forward.
How feasible is it for this to be implemented?
I believe it will. I would say 85 to 90% because it's a positive for the sport.
Well, even a portion of it. You mentioned a day of, and that's a very tricky issue. The issue of whether fighters are allowed to just rehydrate and eat and do whatever they want, or does that create an issue when there's a huge difference? And I'm not qualified to figure that out, but I know that many people in the sport have different opinions on it, and so it's a tricky issue. And in this case, different organizations have a different opinion. But that's probably something that you guys could sit down and negotiate too.
But also, this is also an educational process. Fighters are becoming more educated. Trainers are becoming more educated. Now we're reaching out to the fighters from the 4, 6, 8 round, so they understand what happens to your body when you lose too much weight, or what happens to your body after the weigh-in and you eat certain things that are not going to help you. So education and doing this type of campaigns is going to help in the long term to have fighters much more healthy.
Now, you said fighters learning more, and that brings us to the whole issue of suspensions, which will lead us into the question of use with it for performance-enhancing drugs. Now, suspensions, when they're handed down, for instance, here's an example. You guys I think you issued the suspension against Adrian Broner.
Yes, correct.
For his comments in the ring. Now, that one's a little more, that's probably something, I picked as an example something that probably would be one that would be difficult, maybe, depending on your viewpoint, for all the organizations to say, oh, well, we go along with that suspension absolutely 100%, because in all truth, that was not over not making weight, it wasn't over doing something total attached to boxing. You as an organization made that decision, whether people agree with it or don't agree with it. But so that brings me to this issue of everybody honoring suspensions. It would strike me that the suspensions over drug use and other things, you might be able to figure out a way for all the organizations to all acknowledge suspensions. How tricky was that discussion to navigate for all of you?
It was very good. And my personal opinion, it's a must. If we want to go out and work together, the easy way for one organization to hurt the other organization is to say, okay, I'm not going to respect their suspension, I'm going to allow this fighter to fight for my champion. And that has happened throughout the years, not directly regarding suspensions, but yes, directly when you have mandatory challengers or when you have specific commitments, and then one promoter or fighter just simply goes to the next organization. You say no, then I go to the next. They say no, I go to the next. That's what we're trying to prevent. We're trying to make this to have the best fights for the fighters. I mean, for the fans, for the industry. They have the issue of the cruiserweight fighter who was just found second offense in Russia. I don't recall his name. I'm sorry.
Yeah, it's okay.
He was going to fight Lebedev, and he was found that he had the second offense. So the WBA suspended him 2 years. The correct thing for the WBC to do is to acknowledge that suspension and respect it. Suspensions, the key is when it has to do with a medical. If it's administrative, if it's another type of suspension, then you can have a certain flexibility. But specifically on the Broner case, we believe in human rights, we believe in fair play, we believe in human equality. And the WBC fought 16 years side by side with Nelson Mandela against apartheid.
Right.
And that was successful. So the Broner comments were an outrage. We received so many comments from the fans, disgusted with what happened, and we believe that this can lead into helping Broner to become a better person, to become a focused fighter, and be one day an example to the youth of the world. So I think Broner will eventually, he did come before the Nevada State Athletic Commission and made the public apology. So I think that eventually is going to be something that is going to be corrected.
Well, now, that was pretty much what you were asking in your suspension, so I would think that would adjudicate the suspension, no?
Yes, I immediately contacted the WBC board, and we just are waiting just for the transcript. We were not present, but this was not to hurt Broner or to put him in the light. This is
well, right. I understand that, and the point is, those kinds of things, though, are the kind that, as you point out yourself, you're likely to get 3 organizations to say we're gonna go along with this because in truth, if you honestly, it's pretty tough to prevent somebody from. Of course, you're not preventing him from applying his craft because he can still fight, but the question is, can't fight for a world title or whatever. So if all 4 of those organizations did it over something that's non-medical, it'd be hard to get them all to agree. And I'm not even sure you could weigh in on this. Would that even be appropriate based on whatever? Because I'm not arguing with you over your viewpoints. I'm just saying it would be very tricky to get all those 4 to do that. Is there a way to kind of waive that part of it and just make sure that at the very least on medical issues the 4 of you can agree?
Yes, I believe the intent of such agreement of the suspensions is based on the medical. If a fighter has no license, if he has medical pendings, MRIs, problems with the anti-doping results, those should be acknowledged and respected, yes.
That brings us directly to the use of PEDs and how it can be stopped and the consequences for fighters when they're caught. We live in an age where, except for Olympic testing, everybody else is behind the curve. It's just a fact. I think almost everybody can agree with that. But there are some methods that can be utilized. And Dan, I don't know if you wanted to jump in here and mention something about the UFC, which is recently has done something very dramatic and very interesting.
Yes, absolutely, Al. You know, recently Dana White was very heavily quoted talking about the costs and involved in doing proper testing for PEDs. And for those of you out there that are UFC fans as well as boxing fans, you're very well aware of what happened with Wanderlei Silva and with Chael Sonnen recently. And the tests, as I'm understanding it, these new high quality tests are ones that are completely random, and they're also extremely expensive. I believe the price that was quoted was something like $45,000 for a fight. That would be for 2 fighters. To go through the process of testing them during the fight or before the fight. That is an astronomical amount of money. And you know, when you start thinking about boxing and you think about how many events the UFC has and how many events boxing has, it seems like in this one area, this might be an area where and this is me just talking here, but this might be an area where boxing and UFC could actually get together in order to find a mutual answer and bring those costs down to be able to do this testing. I'm curious to hear again, Mr. Sulaiman, what you've thought about some of these prices and about what the direction is with the testing for PEDs in boxing.
Well, we cannot hide from the fact that some substances are going all over the world in all sports. And we cannot hide the fact that there's a concern that there's this situation going on in boxing. We believe that this problem is only in the elite, on the fighters who have already a lot of money that can do the use of systems to get this type of advantage. We certainly need to address the situation and the problem, and we have been doing for the past 2 years, and we are looking at options. There are several agencies who can perform these tests, and there's like a menu on how you can do it. If it's going to be random, if it's going to be for every title fight, it's going to be only for several divisions, blah blah blah. So it's a whole way to put a system. I believe there are also options in prices, and I just think that we have to address the matter and be more responsible. It is just too unfortunate that someone would do something to gain advantage And especially when you do something in soccer, well, you're going to win the game. Or in basketball, you're going to win the game. In boxing, you can hurt your opponent. So I think we have to work very hard also in the humanization of the sport with the trainers, the boxers, the managers, the promoters, getting into those fighters and making realize that doing something that gives you an advantage is cheating. If you do something to your glove and you temper your glove to hurt your opponent, you are cheating. And we are going to go very strongly. We're doing a campaign against glove tampering. We're going to get into the testing of PEDs. And we just hope we can find a way to do it the best way possible.
Did you discuss with your contemporaries in the other organization the idea of somehow getting something standardized? For instance, Dan made the point there's X amount of cost involved, and there might be negotiable, or by groups getting together, they might be able to make the cost a little bit less. Did you three groups talk about having some standardized tests for every championship fight? There's sanctioning fees that are paid, obviously, and even if a portion of the money for that test came out of the sanctioning fees, and others had to contribute a little bit here and there might be a way to financially figure that out.
Yes, we discussed this, and the situation, we divided it into two topics. Anti-doping, which is for the regular tests, cocaine, marijuana, other substances that are, as you call it, common drugs, and the other one, which is performance-enhancing drugs, which are basically a system in which you do over a period of time, 1, 2, 3 months, to give you a physical advantage. So we discussed it. The reality is that finances will play part of it, but we are going forward in doing some sort of approach to this testing. We cannot just hide and say, well, somebody else is happening somewhere. It is happening in the world, and we're going to address it. Most of the fights, to have the fans understand also, I would say 85 to 90% of the title fights that WBC sanctions are of the very small grade of, if you want to call it, economics. For example, a champion that fights for a championship and he makes $100,000 for the fight, the cost for him is $3,000 for the organization, and the challenger $1,000. So you're looking at $4,000, and if you're talking about how to use every single penny that comes into the WBC goes back to boxing. So we are going to use the WBC money for the research and for the testing. I believe this is something that is going to come positive, but also we have to work in the learning of what it is and the teaching to the fighters and trainers on how they should avoid getting into this matter.
Well, the other issue about this too is you are the commissions in the various places where you do these fights. You have to kind of work in concert with them, because although you really do have kind of autonomy here, because at the end of the day, while they have rules that will allow somebody to fight, your organizations can still have rules that will allow them to have a championship, which is two separate issues. So in some ways, though you point out the economic issues, in some ways the organizations have a certain clout in this area, because if somebody wants to be a champion, they have to adhere to those rules.
Well, you just hit one of the most important topics in boxing. We cannot hide that the USA is the most important market in the world for the sport. And the organization, our organization, is a world organization.
Exactly.
So we have to deal with Nicaragua, Japan, Philippines, Thailand. The USA, they do have, each state has an autonomous boxing commission, which rules over the sanctioning of an event, so they take over most of the rules. We try to work with the commission to have reciprocity, to have our rules mostly respected, and we discuss certain rules. There are some that they are completely set on not accepting, some that are flexible. So testing, at the end of the day, is the responsibility of the local commission. We cannot show up as a WBC with our bottles and make the test. So this is a very delicate matter. Differently from other countries, in the USA, the local commission is the one responsible of performing the tests. And we're looking into options because each state is different. Some states even test before.
Some don't have a commission.
I'm sorry?
Some don't even have a commission.
Some don't have a commission. Some don't care if there's anti-doping testing. But I like to look into the positive, and we're working very closely with the ABC. We're working with the local commissions. We believe in this, and I'm sure this is going to be getting into something that will lead into a much better scenario regarding anti-doping and PEDs.
Was there some, we'll get off this, but was there some sense among the three of you that working together on this would in any way help?
Yes. Just an idea would be, let's get an agency, let's get a prize for a year of testing randomly, and then
like,
program. Yeah. So it will come up very positively.
All right. Well, we'll look forward to hopefully that being the case. Now, when you all get together, obviously one of the functions of the various organizations when they all got founded it was essentially, we're going to create world championships and we're going to be the ones supervising our ratings, etc. That's the one area in which boxing fans clearly can't make heads or tails out of what's going on in the sport of boxing. I'm sure you know that, and I'm sure you are, keenly aware of all the controversy that surrounds it and all the rest of it. Now, while it might be easy to say we're going to have the same names of the weight classes, it's much trickier to figure out who's supposed to be the champion, the top 10 contender, etc. And everybody has different ratings. And one of the things, of course, just every boxing fan on the planet that would be sitting here talking to you, and you're the only person sitting here from an organization, I'll be asking it of you. Nobody can quite figure out how somebody can be the champion of the world for the WBA, but isn't even in the top 10 of the WBC or IBF. No one in the world can figure that out. That seems like that's something that's become the case simply because, I guess, of jurisdictions, and you can't put that person's name in there. The problem is that person does exist, and they're clearly a very good fighter. Is that something that even your group might talk about, how this idea of pretending somebody doesn't exist might go away?
Yes, this topic is very clear. We understand it, and we appreciate it. Hopefully, the way I will explain it can get through.
Yeah, sure. Go ahead. That's why we're having you on, so you can talk.
The purpose of the rankings, the ratings, it is a list of fighters eligible to fight and compete for your organization.
Right.
Meaning, it is compiled, and the number of positions it's regarding to ability and all the types of considerations, and then you have a list. Why the WBA, IBF, and WBO champion is not in the list in a number is because they appear and they are recognized as world champions from that organization. Why they are not listed? Because they are committed and they have other contracts and obligations that they have to fulfill.
So they're not eligible to fight for your title, so that's why they're not on that list.
They're not eligible as a challenger.
As a challenger.
They're eligible to do a unification fight. They're not eligible, let's say we rate, give me one champion, whomever.
Gennady Golovkin from the middle.
Golovkin is regarded as one of the greatest middleweight champions. Let's say we take Golovkin and we put him number 1 or number 10, whichever number. But then Golovkin's going to say, wait, I cannot challenge you because I have to defend my title. I have a signed contract for September.
Right.
And then I have to do my mandatory by January. So that's why champions are not listed.
Okay, you know what? Let me ask the question differently, because while that one is amazing to fighters, you actually have a great explanation for that, and I'll accept that. Here's the one that I guess I should have asked first. When somebody is, because you made the point, and I think it's a valid point, if somebody's not eligible to fight for your title, I get why they would. That explanation actually resonates with me to some degree. But when there's somebody who is clearly, and it happens sometimes, we see people that are in all 4 of the organizations, they're rated number 3 through 7 or whatever, and that makes a lot of sense because people can have different, but many times we'll have some great contender who clearly isn't listed in one organization, and people are astonished at that. Like, how is it possible for this guy not to be anywhere in the top 10? And I know, part of that may be it's an inexact science, but in some cases it seems so obvious. Is there any way for that to kind of be structured in a way that gives people the idea that everybody that fights, they don't have to pick an organization, that they're just fighters?
Yeah, unfortunately, I can only respond on behalf of the WBC. Each organization has its own ratings committee and its own rating criteria. So I could not answer how they do it. What we do in the WBC, we acknowledge the champions. I don't know if you have ever seen our actual list of rankings.
Yes.
We list the champion, when he won the title, then we list the WBA IBF WBO champions. Then we list the international WBC champion, and we list the silver champion. Right. And then we go to number 1 through 40. We list 40 contenders. And after that, we have a list, which is the not available list. We list a fighter who is committed, who is already signed to compete for another organization. Why he's there? Because he's not eligible to fight for the WBC.
Is that someone that signed right then to fight for a title for another organization, or just because this is the part that's tricky for boxing fans, or a fighter that somehow is aligned with an organization?
No, only if they are signed to fight for the other organization, we put them in the enemy list.
Okay, I got it.
I will be more than happy to discuss specific cases. I believe we have a very, very good, solid ratings committee. Of course, we have made mistakes. We can miss, but I don't think we have any case that would be outstanding or would be a concern. We either have it listed in the place the committee believes is in the correct place, and then we have the not available list. But I truly stand by the WBC ratings to be one of the best, because we have committee members from all over the world, and we do every day we receive results, and it's put into a process to come up with the ratings at the end of the month.
Okay, and the purpose of this conversation wasn't so much to dig into that, but the reason I brought it up is because did you guys even, this is a trickier area to have discussion, did you guys have discussions about how you might, is there any way, does it make sense for these organizations to interact about these rankings? Well, or is that stepping on toes so much that would be like, cats and dogs getting into the same room and trying desperately to get along?
Well, believe it or not, I think the first step would be to discuss mandatories, unifications, and even a tournament, which I'm sure we will discuss.
Tournament.
But the rankings is a little bit more elaborate, but I think it's a way. Sometimes we get misled by a publication. Like you, Al Bernstein, you can have your own opinion, And you
Right.
can make your rankings, and that's your opinion.
Sure, of course.
Check that list. Just like the Ring magazine, they have their rankings, and they do take all the champions and put them in there. And we used to say this our rankings must not be seen as a popularity list. We use it, it's a technical list for the fighters eligible to fight for the WBC championship.
Mm-hmm. Okay, that makes sense. Yeah. Now, and the so when you're with this idea of them getting together in some way, is this something like whether it's tournaments or however, is it something that's kind of sustainable? Because we have some fighters who have dual championships. Do you think it can be sustainable where someone could even hold on to that title for those unification titles for a little while, or will it just evaporate when they don't make a certain mandatory defense?
No, that's a problem. The problem is when you do unifications that are not solid, they are not going to remain. We have been in favor of unifications. We participated in the 80s with the heavyweight, Tyson unifying all the titles, Hopkins unifying the middleweights,
Right.
Super 6 of the Showtime.
Right.
So when a unification bout makes sense and it's solid, we are all for it. But if you're doing a unification just to get away from a mandatory, or because you don't like the promoter of the other guy, or you don't like that TV network is gonna, then you get into a mandatory that is just made to take another title and then they just get rid of the other one. We do not favor hurting another organization, another fighter, another mandatory, but we favor moving forward. Now that we met, we reviewed those divisions who have dual champions, 2 or 3 or 4, and then we're going to start the idea of putting together guidelines, rules, and procedures for unified champions.
That's very good. Now, we'll let you go. By the way, very much appreciate the information. There's a lot of good information here. These meetings, do you think you're likely to hold them on a more regular basis now? Are there moving forward? Do you have plans for other meetings?
Yeah, we agreed. We formed panels to address championship items and rankings items, medical items, and general items which have to be with rules and different technicalities. So we did those panels. It's a president and whoever, 2 or 3 persons he would select for that panel. We have our next meeting, September 24. So the idea is gonna be at least to have 2, 3, 4 meetings a year. But now we're gonna push it a little bit harder because the starting point is gonna requires much more work at this time and attention.
Okay. Well, the part about that I would think boxing fans would like to hear and that makes sense is all the people from these organizations that you've divided it by subject and you have these people looking into it at the very least, and that you have another meeting set down the road at least to talk about this stuff.
And we are open. If you never know who's going to have the greatest idea coming. If a fan has an idea, if a journalist has an idea, we welcome that because fans are the ones who make up the sport. We owe everything to the fans. I am a boxing fan, and I'm sitting at a fight or I'm watching TV and it comes, oh, what if we did this, or it would be great if this happens. We welcome anybody to come out and just give us ideas on how to make it better.
Real quick here, if I throw in just a word or two on this particular subject, when I was sitting last weekend, we were sitting with all the fans around me, and almost unanimously, everybody agrees that the 2 biggest issues with boxing right now has to do with juicing and judging. Judging also now becoming, I think, even more amplified. I think forever we're now going to have C.J. Ross as the name for, when Chuck Giampa's granddaughter had a strange score there. She was originally, immediately, we have a new replacement for C.J. there. I've heard probably 20 really interesting and unique different ways of how to judge a fight. I'm curious, have you been getting a lot of some of these innovative things? I've been hearing everything from elevating the judges above the ring to setting up the two-handed, more Olympic style with monitors, giving the judges. I've heard all types of great ideas. Have you heard anything that's really caught your eye so far, or that sounds like it might be a direction that you might be able to go in for something like that?
Yeah, judging, unfortunately, will always be a point of controversy. When you have a sport that is not objective, that is subjective, that when you have when you don't have points, when you have goals, when you have home runs or runs to score, then it goes down to what a person has written as his opinion on who won the round and how he won the round. We have tried, we are trying, we have several options. We are discussing perhaps in the major fights using 5 judges instead of 3.
Boom, like that.
That way you have a wider, you narrow down the opportunity of a controversy, and you have 5 judges. Then it comes the promoter is going to say, oh, I'm going to have to pay for 2 more. Anyway, we have discussed, is there a way, is it correct to judge round by round? Was it right when the referee there were no judges, no scoring? At the end of the fight, the referee would just raise a hand of who he thought won, and that was so unfair. Anyway, there's a long story on how officiating is. There are opinions and there are options on what to do. The problem is going to come down to the boxing commissions. If we come with a system and the boxing commission says, no, I am going to appoint the judges and this is how they're going to score, then you're completely locked on how to address this matter. We have good relations with most boxing commissions. We believe that most, if not all, officials are honorable. And if they have scored wrongly, it's more incompetence than any other thing. But we believe that officials have to be appointed for that specific fight. You cannot just get 3 names and put them in there. You have to study their background. You have to study if they favor the puncher or they favor the stylist, if they have been consistent lately, if it's a new judge improving, if it's a high stress fight. So there's so many things that we try to use before selecting officials all over the world, and I think you just hit the point. We need to find other options on how to make the scoring and the judging different. Let me give you an example. We have a 4 and 8 round partial scoring. So we announce to the corners. In some countries, we announce to the crowd on the TV how the fight is going, so the fighter knows what the judge is scoring. Many fights, a fighter thinks he's winning, and he's losing the fight in the scores. Then the fight is over, he had no chance to adjust his strategy or do something differently to be more effective in the scoring of the judges. Once the bell rings, then it doesn't matter who is sitting there as a judge, it's already appointed and the fight already started. So if you're able to know by the 4th round, if you're doing enough to win the points, if you're able to know by the 8th round how the fight is going, then it's a little bit of topic that can help the fighter and the audience. People don't like it because of the drama, they say. You still have from 8 to 12 for drama. People don't like it because they say that if the fighter is ahead, he's going to start running. Well, we have over 4,000 fights that have used the open scoring, and there's only 2 or 3 incidents that you can say the fighter stopped engaging. So with solid data, that's one of the rules that we're trying to use, which is to get into the scoring, because it's a problem. And we have to address the problem of scoring. We will welcome any suggestions.
the open scoring, which I'm glad you addressed, which is WBC. You're the only organization, I believe, that has that right now, correct?
Correct.
Yeah. The interesting thing about that, and it's an issue that cuts 3 or 4 different ways. And from the TV standpoint, I can tell you what's fascinating is you just hit on it. You let the corners know, and in some cases, not the house. Isn't that up to the promoter to let the house know? Is it always mandated that when you let the fighters know, you have to let the people in the arena know?
No, it is.
It's not, right?
I'm sorry?
It's not mandated that you have to let the people know in the arena, correct?
No. The rule is written 2 ways. You either have complete disclose, where, like in Japan, they put it in a scoreboard. Everybody,
Right.
they have a system immediately after the score are known, they put it in the scoreboard, they put it in the screens, so everybody knows how the fight is going. You are a TV commentator, and you are an analyst, and you have your scoring. So if you, as a TV commentator, have fighter A winning,
Right.
and all of a sudden the judges show that they have fighter B winning,
Right. Exactly.
the natural thing is the TV commentator is going to go against, because he's
Yeah,
going to...
no, but that's not the question I'm asking. Right. Forget totally, I get that. What I mean is, when you mandate, though, that should tell the corners, which I get, that part of it, is it mandated? It's my understanding that the promoter has a right, whether they want to tell this. Now, we have that issue as a TV organization. It's a constant issue. And we had it recently where it wasn't told to the public, it was WBC, it wasn't told to the fans. We had to make the determination, do we tell the people this information or not? We figured it out from sources at the corner. But my question to you is it mandatory to tell the audience what the scoring is, or is it just mandatory to tell the fighters?
No, the rule, I'm sorry, I got sidelined. The rule is you either make it public in all means possible, even the announcer saying it, or like we have done in Texas, only the commission, they deliver to both corners, and we are not allowed to give it to anybody else. But that was the commission determination. Maybe the commission consulted with the promoter and the TV to make that determination. Right. In the USA, it has been used in Arkansas, in Texas, and Puerto Rico. No other state has accepted the 4-8 open scoring yet.
Right. Okay. Interesting. Yeah, it's an interesting. Listen, that's something we could spend 4 hours on just alone. But yeah. but it's an intriguing thing, and I don't have a knee-jerk reaction to it. My problem is and people will tell you my issue is I live in that gray area where some people like that I live there and some people don't. But it is truly, because I think a lot of these issues, and this open scoring is a perfect example, there is no simple yes or no answer, and there are elements that are to the advantage of both the fighter and even in some respects the fans, and then there are others that seem to be negative for them. So it's a tricky deal. Listen, we appreciate your time.
Very quickly.
Sure.
If you go to Europe, their rules, the jurisdiction, you have the supervisor sitting. Right. We are the ones who get the cards and we score it. We add them up. And you have the promoter sitting next to you. So the promoter of the local fighter knows the scores.
Yeah.
If you go to Thailand, same thing. So this is another way, as we're saying, this is a global, and we have to address.
Exactly, right.
So it is unfair that the other fighter does not know. So it's just another.
Oh, absolutely, right, totally.
And you have every show, you have the score by Showtime or HBO or ESPN by the analyst. So what is the difference? Why not have every 4 rounds the people know how the fight is going?
Yeah, I'm not really opposed to it. I don't know, I can't say I'm not much of a crusader to begin with, but I'm pretty much view myself as a person that reports on things. But I think it's pretty interesting that the concept of open scoring has always been one that I have been fascinated with, because in some levels it's that, for the purist, it takes away this one element of boxing, which is this not knowing. But on the other hand, it evens the playing field in some respects. It also can further illustrate or call out judges that are poor or doing a bad job, and of course some of that's subjective as well. And so there are a lot of different things to it that I think are intriguing. I think the people that just blindly reject it or blindly say it's the greatest thing that ever happened, I got to say, I think we're somewhere in the middle, and I.
Hey, Al, what was the fight? Wasn't there a Canelo Alvarez fight that was the one that was shown that was the open scoring? It's one of the only ones that I remember seeing, and I remember the controversy behind it was the fact that he was ahead by 3
I believe that was the Austin Trout fight, correct?
Austin Trout fight. There you go.
Yeah, and that was an example of a fight. Now, I don't like scoring fights when I announce, and just recently, I've actually, for the first time ever in I don't know how long, I didn't have to score the fight on Showtime, which I'm secretly thrilled about, because I've got another job and I don't like scoring fights and I don't enjoy it. But at that fight, I had it a draw. I thought it was a very close fight, and some had it closer, some had it farther. But that was one where, if I'm not mistaken, Dan and Mauricio, that it became obvious that Austin Trout was, barring a knockdown or a knockout or whatever, was behind by enough in the fight to he didn't have a monstrous chance. And here's the conundrum it created for Austin Trout. He's essentially a boxer, right? And he actually changed his strategy in that fight. That's interesting, because he changed his strategy. It may be a case against and for at the exact same time. This is interesting. Mauricio, I'll let you weigh in on this. And then he thought he boxed very well early in the fight, so he thought he was in pretty good shape, or at least in a position to win. All of a sudden, he realizes, oh my God, they didn't give me credit for any of those rounds. Now, Austin Trout, who is not by nature a slugger or an aggressive fighter, changed his strategy completely and started to be an aggressor, which helped Canelo, in my opinion, in that fight. Now, you could make the case, in a strong one, well, guess what? He better have done that, because he wasn't going to win the fight or whatever. But it also demonstrated how ludicrous the scoring was in some respects, because he probably should have been somewhere in the ballpark, But so you might point to that as a success for this, depending on the way you look at it, because Austin Trout, whatever we want to say about how the judges were performing, and your point was, now they're assigned, so it's too late now. So if you're behind by 4 points, well, you got to think of something that's different, right? Mauricio, you there? Oh, did we lose him, Dan?
Oh, I think we lost him. Hold on.
All right, darn it, that's a shame.
Well, it's okay. We'll give him a second and see if he comes back.
Sometimes.
That will.
It's interesting, though. That fight is an intriguing one, to be sure.
Well, that was the one that.
Did we get you back yet?
Yes, I'm back here.
Oh, perfect. So did you hear that whole scenario I laid out?
At the end, no, but.
Well, my point at the end was, it may be that you could look at that and say, you know what? That's a success for open scoring, because no matter whether the judges they're already assigned, they're already doing their job. It's too late, as you pointed out earlier. You can't do anything about that now. So if you're behind by 4 points, well, guess what? Somehow, whether you think it's right or wrong, you've got to do something about it.
Yes, both ways. I agree.
It's a strange argument, because it cuts both ways,
Right. Yeah, it'll take time if the rule gets a little bit more exposure in the U.S., it might catch up to the fact.
It looks like we're starting to lose.
We may have some issues. Well, listen, we will thank Mauricio, and we'll thank him off air for his for his efforts. It's fascinating. That topic, we went way longer today than we anticipated,
Wow.
only because these topics are fascinating, aren't they?
I mean, we really need to bring him back on again, and he's so forthcoming, which is fantastic. And that was the whole reason why I wanted to get him on here in the first place, because he's coming after some of these topics and going after them, and he's willing to show some transparency, which I think is really, really needed right now.
And I think, you know what, it demonstrates that we need to get some of the folks from the other organizations on as well, and get their viewpoint, too, of how this meeting went, and maybe we'll effort that and see what we can do.
I'm on it.
Yeah, there you go. If I just suggested, it could happen, right? It's like, you know, yeah, I think
and we have Mauricio back.
Pardon?
I'm back.
He's back.
Mauricio, oh, you're back. Thank you. We were just thanking you kind of off air, but we really appreciate you taking the time to do this with us. And we were pointing out how it's important, not just for you, probably for the people in the other organizations, and also to give them a little platform to, people may agree, they may disagree, however they feel about what you're saying. Your organizations, to a degree anyway, are the people that are running this sport. Obviously, there, as you point out, there are other entities involved. There are the promoters and the TV networks all around the world, not just the United States, that drive the commerce part of the sport. There are the commissions in the United States and even then countrywide in other countries that drive part of the rules and all the rest of it. Your organizations drive the titles and the sanctioning and also some of the rules and all the rest. So it's this, you know, intermixing of everybody, but clearly how the organizations handle themselves has a big impact on boxing, and we appreciate you taking some time.
I really enjoyed it.
All right, Mauricio, thank you so much. Maybe we can get you back sometime.
Anytime, I will be honored to be here.
All right, you take care, and it was good to talk to you.
Thank you. Take care.
Very good. And Dan, our next effort at Hangouts will be early next week when we come back to talk about the Canelo Lara fight, which is going to be so interesting.
Man, that is going to be one great fight. A lot of people are calling it a 50-50 fight right now.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah, and I think it is a 50-50 fight. As we head into that fight, there'll be all kinds of different opinions on who will win. We're going to be doing that next Tuesday. We'll be before the fight, and we'll give you an update on who some of our guests will be. We may have a couple of guests on for that show to have a little discussion, a round-robin discussion about that match and all its ramifications, and also what may happen in it. I'm going to be privileged to be doing that fight on Showtime. I should point out that the Boxing Channel will have complete and total wall-to-wall coverage the week leading up to the fight and post-fight as well. So we'll have all that for you. Dan, as always, appreciate your great efforts.
Thank you, sir, and appreciate you taking the time, and I'm looking forward to the next one.
We're going to have another great hangout next week, so all of you join us.